Okay.
All
Hi, hi.
right. Hi, Rachel. How are you?
Good. Doing well.
Good, good. This is Chaya Parkoff and Rachel Burnham, and we are here for our Chizuk in Shidduchim webinar, practical Chizuk. We try to give some practical tips, answer some questions that come up when you're the mom of people dating, and when you're the coach of people dating. It is, just so you know where we are, it is the 9th of Elul. We are approaching the 10th. I think it's probably the 10th by you. It is September 9th, 2019. And this will be our last webinar before 5780.
That's right.
Wow. 5779. Right. Wow. We're going to go 5780. Well, Rachel, I have some questions for
Go
you.
for it.
I get, things come up in my conversations with friends who have kids in Shidduchim. I hear it from clients in my therapy practice. And so I wanted to run some things by you because I always love to hear your wisdom as someone who is really was in the trenches of dating for a long time, and now
Still in
thank
the
God
trenches.
married and a mommy, but also has the merit of working with lots of single people who want to be married, and the moms and dads and parents of them, so that we can all kind of navigate this with as much well-being and least amount of anxiety and freaking outness, which some people tend to do. I think we all have that at some
Go for it.
So this came up in a conversation with someone recently, and that is their daughter was dating someone. This is not a couple where the parents, I know there are situations where parents are planning on supporting their kids. And so the kids really don't have to talk about money because the parents are really having the money conversations. I'm talking about kids who are planning on more in the professional realm. They are going to be earning money, whether the husband's going to be the primary breadwinner or they're both going to be earning. But in this case, the daughter was very reluctant to discussing money with the boy she was dating, even though there were concerns about how were they going to live and what was it going to look like. But they didn't want to talk about it. She didn't want to bring it up because she was afraid it would ruin the shidduch. And I could tell you as a therapist what I think about that, but I'm curious what you think about that from the dating perspective and what you've experienced with people you've worked with.
Okay. So good question. Again, we're not going to focus on parents that are supporting because that's for the parents to sort out. So first of all, it's important to just backtrack a little bit and recognize that a person's perspective on finances is very much baked in from their childhood. Either the way they were bred and raised with finances worked out really well, and then they want to repeat that pattern. For instance, save for something really big, and then you buy one big house, or but save, scrimp, save, or live for the moment, like just buy it. Okay, so we won't have a big house, but we'll just buy fancy clothes and we'll eat well, and so what? We won't be able to afford our own car. We'll just keep renting, we'll keep leasing.
Right.
There are different philosophies out there. I'm not going to give my opinion on better or worse, but
right.
Typically, what we're bred with, if it really worked for us growing up, we want to repeat it. And if it really didn't work for us, not only don't we want to repeat it, but we have an allergic reaction to it. So when you have two people who either something went really well or something really did not go well together in a marriage, and they have different philosophies, not only are their philosophies clashing, but the core of their childhood, foundation of how they were raised are actually clashing. And that kind of triggers people into like a state of frenzy where like, you're knocking the way my parents raised me, or like, I could never do that the way my parents did. I have to do something different. There's no way. I'm never going to be that person who never lives and just save, and we never have anything just for one time, buy a house. I need to be able to feel like I can breathe a little bit. I can buy myself a pair of shoes when I want. So money really triggers people very deeply, very, very deeply, down to how they were raised, and it tends to either support or knock the way a person was raised. And so when you're knocking the way somebody spends money, you're knocking a certain part of their value system that is very sensitive, very, very sensitive. So it seems like, oh, just money, what's the big deal? It's not true. It's very much not true. As example, I know somebody who like never allowed to buy brand name anything, not brand name shampoo. Everything had to be like, Target, Costco, ShopRite, shampoo, never allowed to buy brand name things. So they come into a marriage and they're like, everything has to be Pantene and Fructis and like whatever shampoos are like the real ones that they were never, all the things they were never allowed to have, basically, right? And then you have another person coming into the marriage where everything was like always full price, full brand, and like they never had money for, a vacation because everything was like given away to brand name this and brand name that, and it was always about what everyone was seeing externally. And internally, like they might have had shampoo and fancy clothes, but like they were always living in a tiny little apartment, So both sides are coming into a marriage with their own story. And sometimes, you say money, I say money. It's not about the money. It's about the story that supports and is behind this whole thing. So I really encourage couples to sit down and talk about their philosophy on money. Are you a spender? Are you a saver? If they're further along in a relationship, what if I have children and I'm not going to be able to work as the mom? So are you going to be able to support, are you going to be able to make enough to support both of us? Would I have to get a second job? Maybe I'll have to look for a different job. But these are conversations that are coming on more seriously in dating. But what I encourage couples to do is not to just get that financial value system, but to get the story behind it. Because when you're able to put that value system in context of a story, it makes you appreciate where the person's coming from. Then when you get married and all of a sudden this person is buying brand and everything, and you're like, this is such a waste of money, what are they doing? You'll understand that they were starved in their mind, in their narrative. They were starved as a child from buying things that they always wanted and couldn't have. And on some level, this is like their chance to be free and buy whatever soap they want, So it's like, give it to them. It's a bar of soap. Let them just buy the good, expensive Oil Valet. I don't know, whatever brand that like makes them happy, because it's not just the soap. It really hits them in a deep place of how they were raised. And if someone was raised and happy with the way that they were raised in terms of the financial value system, if you're taking that away from them, you are knocking the way that they were raised, and that worked well for them. Right. So you are now insulting me. You're insulting my parents. Right. You're insulting my parents' parenting, right? So you've insulted a whole bunch of people along the way, and you're thinking, I don't know, it's just like a body wash. Like, I don't understand what the big deal is, right? So it's really important to get the story behind the story, so to speak.
So great.
So we can put the financial triggers and financial anxieties kind of in context, so everyone can kind of calm down and we can have a rational conversation. And then I'll say, like, I get it. I hear why buying, the most expensive produce is really important to you. Every time you open up that fridge, the stuff was old and moldy because your mom used to get it from like, a week late because it was cheaper, and it was always mushy and gross. And you just want to buy like really high-end good produce because you just were dying for like a delicious fresh apple. I get it. You know what? We're going to buy you a case of apples. Mm-hmm. However you like, buy the most expensive apples. And sometimes in a marriage, we have to say, like, this is going to come from my Shalom Bias account. Like, even if you don't actually have a bank account, which I do encourage people to do, I think that's important to have a mental Shalom Bias account where sometimes it is worth the few extra dollars to make your spouse happy, to do something that's really important to them that you think is ridiculous. Like, really, you need that kind of cut of meat for Yontif, like, want a simpler cut of meat, like, do it, who cares? I don't care. But it means something to them, right? So, it's worth it to take it out of the Shalom Bias account, be it a real account or not. Right. to do something for that spouse that is something that they really enjoy and they really need. So that's just the backdrop. Getting back to the question, it is important to sit down and figure out what are your value systems and philosophies on money. B, realize it's okay if our value systems are slightly different. There typically is there's always more of a saver and more of a spender. I
was going to say, plan on it. Your zivug is probably not going to have your same money.
Exactly. It does not have to be the same, but both should have boundaries. So for instance, okay, we're going to take out X amount every month to put away for a house. We're going to take out X amount to just pay our rent and our utilities and our car insurance and our health insurance, okay? And from the money that's left, I know you like to spend, so we'll put a little bit away for you to feel like, I don't know, $100 a month. You could feel like, okay, you can spend, and it'll feel more comfortable for you to just spend it however you like. I recommend that there's a certain amount of money for both sides to spend however they like, and nobody can say boo on that. So if I need to spend it on an expensive meal and you want to spend it on an expensive dress, or you can split that money up and buy multiple things or save it for a few months and buy one big thing, but every person should have a little bit of freedom and a little bit of their own control over a small portion. Otherwise, it sometimes could feel a little dictatorship, one side to the other. It should be spoken about. But I do believe that not only getting that financial value system and recognizing it could be different, but getting that story behind it and then figuring out where can we meet in the middle. Okay, so you're more of a saver, I'm more of a spender, not a problem. They typically marry each other. Where can we meet in the middle? What are our goals? Like, do we want to just, constantly be leasing cars? Do we want to eventually buy a home? Do we want to be able to buy our own furniture? Or maybe we're just okay with going on Craigslist and that works for us. And every 5-10 years, we'll just go on Craigslist again and get another used piece of furniture. We don't mind. It depends on what is important to you and what you value. So it's an important conversation to have. But I do feel that if you're dealing with two healthy people who both have healthy middos and who are flexible, wanting to bend towards the next person, they don't have to be the same, but in a mature, respectful way, more often than not, they're able to come to some kind of conclusion. Now, you and I both know that this whole conversation is silly because you got married, I got married, and did your finances turn out exactly as you planned in your budget, right? Did everything just turn out exactly the way you had in mind? Of course not. So, it's a little bit of like just kind of a broad, brushstrokes of an outline of how we see ourselves. What's most important for a girl to feel is a girl wants to hear from a guy that he's going to do whatever he can to take care of her. Okay? The dollars and cents doesn't matter as much as that statement. So for instance, as a mother, to share with your sons, if they're working, it's not that a girl needs to feel like you're bringing in the millions, but she wants to feel cared for. She wants to feel cared for emotionally. She wants to feel cared for financially, physically, right? So to say a statement like, I know that you're going to work and it'll be I will so appreciate that, but you need to know that Parnassa is my responsibility and I will do whatever it takes to support, you and our family in Ritz Hashem one day if we're heading in that direction. That to a girl is extremely calming. Now, again, we haven't even said how much money he makes, and he might not make much, right. But it's that sense of achrayus. It's that sense of like, it's my responsibility. I mean, I know this is controversial.
Not with me.
look at Nick Suba. It's his responsibility. Okay, we'll leave it at that. It's his responsibility. If she decides that what she wants is her husband to sit and learn and she's willing to work and her family's willing to work to take care of him, that's fine, but it's still his responsibility. Let's just leave it at that. This is not my opinion. Just look at your own personal ksuba. Okay. And for a girl, what a man wants to feel is he wants to feel appreciated for that.
Respected.
He wants to feel appreciated, respected, and he also wants to feel, especially a young guy who's just kind of starting out, and guys get very overwhelmed by finances, and especially there's finances, and then there's like from finances, which are two totally different conversations. I mean, like having a conversation with my non-Jewish coworkers is just like, oh my gosh, I don't know why you're not like buying a yacht. Like seriously,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly.
But so for a frum guy who gets a little bit overwhelmed by like hearing things about like tuition and Shabbos clothes and Yontif and how much matzah costs and wine costs and all the things that go into like just making a basic typical Shabbos Yontif, basically running it from home. I think for today, even though a girl will have babies and not be able to work fully, if she has a job and she is able to work, I think that he would appreciate her saying, and I'll do whatever I can to help when I can help.
When I can help. Right.
When I can help. Now, there are some relationships where a guy will be like, listen, money, I got the money, you get the kids. Okay? Your job is to run a home. What I need is a hot meal on the table every single night. I need a clean home. I need kids taken care of. I got the money. Don't even worry. I don't even need you to work. I don't want you to work. I want you to go get your nails done, go to the gym, look good, take care of the kids. I got the rest, right? So for some women and like some couples that works, and that's fine. But for a lot of guys, especially young guys who are starting out in their careers and like they're not making a lot, they get a little bit nervous. So knowing that they'll have a little bit of help is definitely helpful to them, even though you and I both know that, you know, with increasing responsibilities and increasing kids, there's only so much one person can do when you're working and housewife and cooking and babies, and it's just, there's only so much one person can do, right? So these conversations, like we said, they're just like an exercise in fruition. Like we don't really know what's actually going to happen, but it's more of the sentiment of, I care, I'm going to try, the husband showing I'm going to do whatever I can to support you because that's my responsibility, for the girl to feel like he knows that it's his responsibility and I will help, but it's his responsibility. And after that, you know, stuff happens, life happens. And
it's an ongoing conversation.
It's an ongoing conversation. It never ends until maybe Esther, you know, so does that shed a little bit of light? Does that give a little bit of clarity?
That does. There were a couple of things I wanted to just respond to. I think your point about the backstory and understanding the backstory is so important. And to know that neither is right or wrong. And most likely, like you said, they tend to marry each other, meaning the person who was raised with, you know, saving and investing and not, you know, paying off the credit card every month if you were going to even use one and that kind of thing, usually marries the person who has like no idea about credit cards, and like you actually end up paying more money if you don't pay them off, and they, you know, living within your means and things like that. They tend to marry each other, and there's a reason, because marriage makes you grow. It's not...
Well, it's also because the personalities are, you know, typically not always opposite attract, but more opposite attract.
Complement each other, right? They complement each other. So I think it's important, and I love this idea of just having the conversation and knowing that that's a healthy conversation to have, and that it's not that you're looking for someone who has exactly the same perspective on money as you, because one, you know, then you might have two people who never are going to buy anything. Like you're never going to buy a house, you're never ready to, you know, do anything. And then the other side, you can marry someone and then you're in debt. So I think that's such an important piece, but also know that the narrative is just the story. It's not necessarily the truth of who a person is, but it's just the context from which they're coming from.
Right. The reason why the story is so important, because let's say you marry this person, right? And they might have told you they were more frugal, but you know, people tend to tell us things, we don't actually take them so seriously. Right. Women need to listen to what men say because they're serious about it. So a guy will say like, I'm more frugal, I'm more simple, like I don't really need much, you know. And she's thinking, oh gosh, he totally needs a makeover. His clothes are so horrible. I'll marry him because he's awesome, but I need to totally redo his style. I got to redo his clothes. I cannot marry a guy who dressed, those glasses have got to go, right? So this is what a girl's thinking. So she gets married, and all of a sudden, great, now she's going to buy him a whole new wardrobe, gets him these really cool, funky glasses, and spends a truckload of money on putting him together. And he's like freaking out. Like, you did what with my money? I'm a simple guy. I don't want to look like this. I don't want to spend this money. Like, what are you doing? Right? And she's thinking, but I waited so long to do this because I only married you because you were great, but you totally need a makeover, right? And so if you're able to get the backstory of who a person is and where they're coming from, and him understand, him being able to explain, like, I grew up simply and that was enough and we were enough and we were so happy. Like, I don't need more. I just don't need extra. Right. And her understanding that the extra is really for her.
Oh yeah.
And he might need to say, like, maybe I'll just wear those cool glasses because it makes my wife happy. And she's finds me very attractive in these glasses. So I'm just going to wear the glasses, right? It's a dance. It's a constant rhythm and dance. And we have to kind of help meet each other's needs. But instead of getting upset at that spouse for doing something more or less, or a man thinking like, why is she spending so much on a sheitel? Here's a topic that men don't understand. Sheitels. They don't understand the topic. They never will understand the topic because they don't have to cover their hair, right? So, like, I tell my husband, if you had to wear a black hat like 24/7 and never were allowed to take it off, you would want to make sure it was a nice black hat and a comfortable one.
And you'd want a few.
What?
You'd want a few of them.
Yeah, well, because they get old and tattered and, different styles.
Different styles for different things, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So men don't really understand it. But if they actually had to do it, they'd understand more. So men don't understand why women have to actually spend that much, right? So a woman could be like, you don't love me. You don't want to give me a nice sheitel. Like, why not? And he's thinking, this is so expensive. This is crazy. But if we can sit down and get that story about, like, why is it so important to you? Well, because covering your hair is hard. And maybe your mother's sheitel always looked terrible and you're scared you're going to look ugly like your mom's sheitel. So we're going to get you a nice one. Don't worry. If we can get that backstory, it really diminishes a lot of the flare-ups of all the, of all the conflict that comes up. I just had a couple sitting in my living room like 20 minutes ago that are engaged, and just a young, beautiful couple, trying to do whatever they can to make sure they put whatever cooling rods in place so they can just get their, engagement off on the right foot and their marriage off on the right foot. And it's just so sweet to watch them working so hard, make sure they have they're doing all the right things. They just want to make sure they're doing all the right things, very, very sweet. And I wish that we would want to do that for the rest of our lives, that we want to put all the right, pieces in place to make sure that we are being the best spouse that we can be and really understand the other person so that we don't get ruffled by something that someone else does, and are able to, get the story and the context in order to put it into perspective.
That's great. I mean, and that would save, listen, a lot of people would, we'd need a lot less marriage counseling if people realize that it's not personal.
Right.
When your spouse does something, that it's not personal, it's not about you, it's about them and where they're coming from. And, but I want to say one other thing about the Shalom Bayis account, which is brilliant, right? Sometimes you just write it off, Shalom Bayis account. Sometimes you don't get something because of the Shalom Bayis account. So you may want something, but sometimes it's about withholding and holding back and saying, you know what, I'm not going to get that thing because for Shalom Bayis. So it goes both ways. I think it's just important to know. But I want to dig a little bit deeper on this issue and talk specifically about how do you talk about what money there is before you get married. So let's say we're talking about kids that are in their kids, right? They're in their late 20s, more and more, right? We're seeing kids that are getting married in their later 20s, in their early 30s. They already are established. They may own a home. They may have a savings. How do you talk about that before? Do you talk about it? Is it taboo to talk about it? I mean, I'm asking the question because I want to hear what your experience has been with that. I mean, I know what my, or let's put it this way. What happens when one person does not want to disclose what they have?
Okay.
In a dating situation? Maybe that's a more...
So, early on in dating, I don't think it's so appropriate to be sharing all of that up front.
I'm talking about engaged. They're engaged.
Oh, engaged. Okay, good. Yeah, so I would say much later on and engaged already, I do think that it is a healthy thing for it to be our money together. Okay, we're getting married. A girl's changing her name to his last name. We're going to have your children build your home. This is our money, right? So we could have our joint bank accounts, right? And then maybe I have a private bank account and you have a private bank account because we were both single and we were used to making our own money. But most of our money is a joint bank account. I don't think that it's taboo to discuss. It could be that for people that have very, very large assets at that level, there are some people that do like a halachic prenup, which I don't have so much. I know the RCA prenup, which prevents you from getting stuck as an aguna, is definitely
we've discussed this, and
it's very much supported and being
important.
And it's a very great thing to do. But I don't think it includes finances. I don't think it's actually a financial prenup. So there are some people that do a financial prenup if they're
financial prenup, right?
If they're very large assets. If you're talking about, two kids that are coming from very, very wealthy homes and they're scared that could be an issue, that might be something to speak to a Rav about. I don't know all the halachic details. I think it's got to be discussed with a Rav personally. So that is an option. But otherwise, I don't know if I could dedicate the rest of my life to you and you could dedicate the rest of your life to me, but you can't share what assets we have together. That is definitely a problem. I think that's a crack in the foundation of the relationship. That is a problem. That is definitely a problem. Now, if a guy is disclosing that he's got some major assets, obviously he might be scared to share that in the beginning because maybe a girl will like him because of that.
Right.
But, if you want to share it, that's why I would say don't share it up front. But during engagement, definitely, by marriage, this should be shared.
We should know how much we have. We should know what money we have
when
we're going into this marriage.
So we can make a budget. How are you going to make a budget if you don't know what you have?
Right. You can't do it.
Exactly.
I think that, I know that in some cases it's a red flag when one person doesn't want to discuss it. That's a concern.
I have a feeling there were other red flags besides that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So what that is not a red flag. That is a symptom of lots of other flags.
Yes. That's a great point. That's a great way to say it. That's a great way to say it.
If I could, all right. So if I'm going to share my life with you, but something significant like a basic level of finances I can't share with you, so then I'm not actually sharing my whole life with you, right? Now, there are things to share and there are things not to share. So, for instance, I don't encourage every Baal Tshuva to share every relationship they've ever been in the past. This is no relevance
Not necessary.
to your future. I don't think it's necessary. The guy knows that you weren't from. He knows that you had previous boyfriends. The details are not important.
In fact, true tshuva, it's not even part of you anymore.
Right?
It's literally not even part of you. It's erased. Right. It's not even part of you. It's really, I think spiritually people need to understand that.
That's true.
So, yeah.
But finances, which is ongoing and current, if I can't share that part with you, then I'm almost like not really sharing a full part of my life. And this is like pretty factual information. It's not like opinion. What is in the bank account? How many assets do you have? It's pretty straightforward. And I also think it's dangerous because if you start a marriage on that kind of footing, so are we always going to be hiding something from each other? Like that doesn't really start a marriage off on a good foot. That worries me. But it sounds like this has got other red flags.
Oh yeah.
Some of other stuff going on. So yeah.
So I think the key is that it is something to discuss.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to be supporting each other, or at some point if you're not going to be supported by families, which is many people are not being supported.
Exactly.
They're building their homes. But if at some point you will be, that needs, I think, to be discussed. It reminds me just a little plug for, and just, this whole idea of why it's a Jewish value to be shomer negia, right? To not have physical contact until after the marriage. Representative Viggy Torsky, I remember hearing her speak many years ago, and she was saying how she was speaking to a group of girls who were more run-of-the-mill kind of, maybe it was college girls or something, and she was talking to them about preserving, their dignity with their bodies. And she said to them, if you were on a first date, how would you feel if the guy said, can you take out your checkbook? I'd like to see, that was back in the days of checkbooks, I'd like to see your bank account. And they'd be like, are you kidding me? Like, we barely know each other.
But yet
a couple hours later, they're bearing.
That's an excellent, excellent point. I like that a lot. Considering that I used to do Campus Kirov, and
Okay.
I recently spoke on campus to a sorority, and the focus was the hookup culture. Need I say more? That's actually fascinating. Yeah, and the conversation that I had there, just as a sidebar, really did not go over well because they were so far from the reality of what I was saying, and I really was like going like, I wasn't saying Sherman Agia, you know what I'm saying? I was just saying like, no man deserves the right to your body without even knowing who you are, like your name, like who are you? You know, like that basic dignity. And that just did not go over well. You just don't get us. This is not how it works. Who goes on dates? That's like so old fashioned. I mean, seriously, this is what I was getting.
I know it's really scary out there. God, we're somewhat, you know, we've got some parameters that keep inflating us. But yeah, but by that same token of what, you know, Rebson Twersky said is, you know, same thing in a marriage, right? So once you are married, that aspect of you is now being shared with that person, and so the money should be shared.
Right,
as
it's
well.
just it's just an extension.
You're taking kala classes and chassan classes. Why are you not, you know, taking 100%. Financial classes, money classes, things like that?
Yeah.
Okay, let's switch to a completely different topic.
Go for it. I
had a question on this, but I think we'll save it for another time. We'll move to a different one. So some kids that are in Shidduchim are very close with their parents and share with them what's going on, and they know about their dates, and they know how their dates are going, and they might even be involved in doing some research and things like that. And then you have people who are not at all involved in the dating. They're more removed. I think more, I don't know what you'll tell me is what you see more of, but how do you, you know, well, I guess I'll just speak for moms. For moms who, it happens to be, I'm very grateful. I have a relationship with my kids, and not that people whose kids are not discussing Shidduchim with them don't have relationships, but I happen to have a very open relationship with my kids where they talk to me about what's going on with their Shidduchim. But I know that that's not always the case, and sometimes, and I've actually offloaded a lot of it to you, Rachel, right? And and my kids go talk to you so that I can just be loving mom and listen, right? And then you can really get down to the nitty gritties of what's on their mind. So just a plug for Rachel Burnham as a dating coach. So I guess some advice for the parents, I would say probably more moms than anything, that maybe their kids are quiet about it. They're not willing to be forthcoming with information. Maybe like, you know, just some advice for them, how to handle that. I'll also put in a plug for Rachel from the mom's perspective, because there are times where I call you, you know, and I have an account with you, you know, I need a few minutes to bounce something off. And it's been very, very helpful, and it's helped my relationship with my kids because I'm not trying to get that information from them or trying to get them to think to be able to be forthcoming with information that they may not even be clear on yet.
Right.
So,
all right. This is a super important topic. And what I like about this question is that I can say things publicly that I cannot say one-on-one. And you'll see where I'm going with this. So I would split it into 4 categories, okay? Number 1, which is obviously the most ideal situation, is your situation, right? Having a good relationship with your kids, having an open communication with them about dating. And one of the reasons why you have that is because you can outsource the really kind of awkward conversation so that I can just be mom. Okay, so that's obviously the healthiest, and that's the nicest scenario.
My kids also know that we have their back 100%, and that if at any point they say they could be under the chuppah, and if they know this is not, because I know so many girls,
right,
who end up, who knew inside this was not the right one, but they did it anyway, and then they end up divorced or in bad marriages. So my kids know that they're not doing it to please me, that we totally 100% have our back. And I think that that's something that your kids need to hear from you,
right?
That you support them, and that
you need to verbalize that, not just
verbalize it, say it out loud. We will literally, you say the word, you can give me a wink from the chuppah, you could be circling the groom. If you know this is not the right thing, you just give us the word and we will escort you out, and it's okay.
And also, just by saying that, you like bring down the anxiety level tremendously. Yeah. So,
okay. So you were dividing into 4 categories.
Case scenario. Okay. So the first case scenario is that. The second case scenario are kids who when they were younger, they spoke to their parents, but now they're getting a little bit older. And it's not that they don't respect their parents, but here's the 2 things that are going on in this kid's head. My parents got married when they were very young. So they got married in their young 20s. They don't really understand what I'm going through right now. And so the pain and the disappointment and the constant, badgering or shaming by people setting me up, or the shadchan or whatever it is, I just feel like no one could really understand or relate to me. And the parent just wants to get married. And that pressure and that anxiety, the more I speak to a parent, I know I'm constantly disappointing that parent by not being married, or by not having a date, or by not going to that shadchan. And it's so stressful that I just can't talk to my parent. I love them, and I did talk to them, but I just can't talk to them anymore because I've gotten older. Okay, so that's another case, which is not bad. It's just kind of subject to the circumstances, so to speak. Okay. The next case I think is a harder case that I really can only say publicly. And I've had many cases like this, and it's sad for me because I can't actually speak to anybody about it, but publicly I feel like no one knows, who I'm talking about. So I can just, a lot of kids that love their parents, out of respect for their parents, will never say, I don't want a marriage like yours. Yeah. And I don't want to be rude, but I don't want your opinion on relationships because I don't want one like you have. Now, whether or not that's based in reality or not, it's not my judgment call to make. But for whatever reason in this child's mind, and they spent a lot of time growing up in that home, for whatever reason of whatever they observed, they don't want to emulate that dynamic. And they feel that by going to you, they could repeat that dynamic, and they want to make sure not to repeat the dynamic. And frankly, as much as they might respect you as a parent, they don't respect your relationship advice because they see it didn't work so well for you. And this is something I can never say to a parent because it's very painful. And obviously, I'm sworn under secrecy by the child to never go back to the parent and say this, but I hear this all the time. I don't want a relationship like my parents. Help me. What can I do to make sure that I don't have a relationship like that? And so you can't go to a parent for advice, right? Unfortunately, and they love you. The child loves the parent. And I want to share in the simcha. When I get married, when I find him, I want to share in that simcha with you. But along the process, I need to make sure literally to tune out any advice that you might have given me through life in relationships because it didn't work for you. And I don't want that in my head. I had a girl whose mother was badgering her to lie about her weight and lie about her age and lie about her height. And she's just like, I can't listen to my mother. I'm not a liar, and I don't want to start my relationship off like a liar. And I don't want to tell my mother that I don't respect that you're saying this, but I don't, help me. So that's probably the hardest situation because the child really wants to share and really can't because they don't want to emulate that kind of situation. And the other one is, which is basically a spin-off of that, is even if the parents had a good marriage, even if that marriage worked for those parents, a child doesn't often, not always, I would say there are many times where a child doesn't feel understood.
Right.
And I just don't think you understand me. As much as you love me, as much as you want the best for me, you have a very different image of the kind of guy that you think that I should be marrying. And therefore you ask different questions. You stress different information when I call you and ask you for what the references say. And you kind of push certain guys because maybe you want me to marry a firmer guy, or you want me to marry a guy with more financial backing, or whatever it is. And I feel that agenda being pushed, and I feel like you're not really understanding me. And therefore I love you and I respect you, but I can't have you in my Shidduchim. So that's really what it boils down to. You know, kids who don't feel properly understood, and their parents have their back, but they have their own back first, and they have their kids' back second.
Right.
Here's the thing. As a parent, you need to know you had a chance at this for yourself. Your chance is now done. You're married. This is your child's chance. And just because certain things worked for you does not mean it's going to work for them. And just because certain things, you know, worked out differently for you doesn't mean that it can't work out, or it, you know, just because it worked a certain way for you doesn't mean that it can't work out for them, you know? So if you would have dated a guy like that and said no, could be this dynamic works for them. And you have to be able to recognize that that could work and step out of the way. Know when to step out of the way. You know, a parent getting involved is really when they start seeing red flags, things that are inappropriate, behaviors that are unhealthy, abusive, disrespectful, any of these kinds of things. If a child says, you know, he makes fun of me, he puts me down, somehow I'm always the butt of lots of jokes, any of that, definitely you need to step in in some way, shape, or form. But otherwise, you know, a lot of parents, and the worst is, not the worst, but it's common that parents that have good marriages, they assume because this marriage dynamic worked for me, that this is what my child needs because it worked for me. And it's not necessarily so. There are many different kinds of personalities and many different dynamics that work. What it has to work for is your child.
That's right.
Okay. What I will say though, is that the good news is it's not a bad thing if your child won't share. But I do think it's important that they share with somebody.
Bingo. Right.
A Rav, a coach, a therapist. It can't just be like blindly a ship like sailing in the night by itself. That is really dangerous, mainly because as much as they could be a smart kid and a great kid, they've never been married. So frankly, they don't know what marriage is supposed to look like, what marriage should look like, and what to look out for. So they should be speaking to someone. And as a parent, instead of fighting it, just embrace it. Like, sweetheart, you know what? I totally respect you want to speak to so-and-so. I think that's great. I love you. I'm here if you want to talk about it. You know, this kind of business of like, why don't you share anything with me? You need to call me more often. Why don't you tell me more? That's probably the best way to turn your kid off. Okay.
Yeah.
I've had mothers call me telling me that I need to tell their kid that they have to share with them everything or else. I said, I will not say that. And if I do, they'll definitely not speak to you anymore about this. Right? So this happens very often. And a lot of the girls and guys that speak to me are often because they don't feel that they can speak to their parent based on the reasons that I said. They're an older single. They don't feel understood. They feel like their parents' marriage was a disaster. They don't want to repeat it. Or their parents' marriage is healthy and they just don't feel personally understood. Mm-hmm. So they need to like branch off and do their own kind of thing, which is not bad as long as they're getting proper hadracha by somebody.
I think that's great. And I think it's perfect timing for Elul, right? Because really what I kept thinking about is it just forces us as parents to look in the mirror and look at ourselves and, our marriages, or for people who are no longer married for one reason or the other, we're all developing as individuals. We're all supposed to be trying to get, I always say every year when I talk about this, I talk about, every year they make a new iPhone and every year people line up and sleep outside the store to get the new and improved version. And I say, hopefully there's a new and improved version of Chaya Parkoff every year. And I'm as excited, for that one. And so that's really, we need to be looking at ourselves and in a loving way and asking ourselves, how can I improve my marriage? How can I improve my relationships? How can I let go of my child and let them, be, especially if they're marriage age, I want them to be able to be adults. My friend Batya Epstein from Dallas said many years ago, she said, the most amazing news is God gave us free will. The problem is he also gave it to our kids, and they have their own choices to make, and they have their own story narrative to write, and they have their own avoda and tafkid that they need to fulfill in the world, and we don't know what that
As a
is.
parent, we want to do whatever we can to make that smooth and easy and comfortable, and it should just go well. And I want them to just have a pretty life with like a nice little bow tied. But everyone's got to go through their own avoda and their own path, and sometimes it's hard to watch our kids struggle, but it's part of development.
It's so painful to watch them struggle, but it's so, what I'm learning, as I get older, I'm learning it both professionally. I work with pretty much middle age and up, and I work with people in their hundreds, 80s, 90s, hundreds, and the adult kids that are dealing with aging, and is this just being there for someone in their pain rather than trying to get them out of it. And that's what people want. They want to be, because we cannot shield from pain. Like, that's just not a reality of life. Right. But what we can teach them, I think the Lubavitcher Rebbe said this, and I think it's so important. Rather than teaching our kids to love Hashem, more importantly is to know that Hashem loves them, no matter what. That's what I would say. What I want my kids to have more than anything is to know that Hashem is always with them, and no matter what they're going through, Hashem will help them get through. Like, to me, because life is hard. It is challenging. Marriage is challenging. Raising children is challenging. Living in the world is challenging. That is part of that's the way it is. And it's for a reason, and we grow and we develop and we become better versions, right? How do they upgrade the iPhone? Because they learn about all the stuff that's not working right, or stuff that is right and they want to make it better. And that's what we are. We have to figure out what's not working right and try to fix it, and stuff that's working right, make it even better. It's hard. So I think looking in the mirror at our own selves, if we're really struggling with, why is my kid not talking to me? Why is my kid not telling me? Maybe that's time to look at myself and say, maybe I should talk to someone. And then again, sometimes it is a red flag situation where there could be, and usually, like you said, it's a symptom, not the flag. And I think being self-awareness, self-honesty is so important. I'm all about, in the work that I do, about being as proactive as we can, so we can avoid crises. We deal with crises, but I'd rather prevent crises. And I think that being willing to say, talk about stuff that you may think, oh, if I just don't say it, it won't be there. That's not. Well,
a few things. One of the best ways to help our children in Shidduchim is to work on our own marriages.
That's it.
Because by working on our own marriages, we are paving the way and the example for what a healthy relationship looks like. And so, if we show them it's okay to scream and yell at your spouse, well, then they're going to think it's okay for them to scream and yell at their spouse, or their spouse to yell and scream at them, neither of which is a good idea. So, by working on ourselves, we are in turn kind of helping them guide that way. I also think it's important, in a relationship, as you're talking about kind of the money concept. But, if I don't talk about it, then if I bring it up, it'll ruin the shidduch, Yeah. So, like I tell people, like, what would your house look like if we never took out the garbage? We would just kind of like sweep it underneath the carpet. Oh, you'd hide it for a while, but it would get really stinky really fast. So, taking out that garbage once a day, once every 2 days is much easier than taking it out, once a year. So let's make sure that we, if we have something to talk about, I recommend a great book. It's called Fierce Conversations. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. The premise of the book is basically that we're all one fierce conversation away from a big change in our life. So for instance, if I don't have the courage to have a fierce conversation about getting a raise at work, or somebody that I want to marry, right? So then I'll never have the conversations that if I would have had those conversations, they could have changed my life.
That's right.
And I'm scared to have them. Let's have another baby, like things that could really change a person's future. And so if we had the tools in which to have those conversations, we can literally change our life one conversation at a time. So I recommend it. It's called Fierce Conversations.
Yeah, I think you once recommended on a prior webinar, so I'm glad you're mentioning it again.
Yeah,
I wrote it down and I didn't get it, but I wrote it down.
I think couples need to have that. And if my neshama is good enough to share with you for Olam Haza and Olam Haba, then my bank account should also be good enough to share with you.
Right? And in terms of the fierce conversations, I just want to say how this came up in a conversation with someone recently. They were dating and they were going through a little bit of a rough, it wasn't like it's not a quick dating. Some people do the Shidduchim, 3 dates, it's done, but then I'm talking about and many Rabbanim are very, supportive of developing a relationship before they rush into marriage, just depending. Everybody's different. Every situation's different. Different communities are different. Kids within communities are different. It's really not one size fits all. But let's say this is a case where the people were dating for a little while and definitely saw themselves as life partners and they wanted to move towards that and they hit a rough patch on something. And one said, let's go talk to a counselor about it. And the other, and someone said, well, if you have to go talk to a counselor, there must be something wrong with the relationship, and why continue? I will tell you, I'm married 28 and a half years. When my husband and I were dating and we were serious, we hit a rough patch about something and we went to a therapist and we talked it out. And his single friend, who might still be single 28 years later, said, oh, well, when things get rough like that, it's time to get out. So I think it's very important to just that's, I think I'm almost certain it was Rebbetzin Zahava Bronstein, Aleha Hashalom.
I love that.
Oh my gosh. Wow. The world really.
That's great. I knew her personally.
Did you? Okay. So you might have heard her say this. I heard her speak. She was
Yeah. I used to go to her for shots.
Close with the Dallas community. And when I lived there, she said, you should be willing to, I'm almost certain she said it. You should be willing to hock your wedding ring for good cleaning help and good counseling.
Yes. She did say that. She did say that.
So those are two things that I think.
And what's worse than having cancer? Stage 4 cancer.
Right.
So what happens in relationships very often is a little something happens. There's like a little bump. There's a little scratch. I hate to use the word cancer. It's a little bit of an extreme term, but if we don't, if someone finds out chas v'shalom they had cancer and it was early detection, there's a lot you can do, right, and a lot that can be helped. Right. And most people are cancer free and can be in remission for years. Yes. But when you come to the doctor stage 4 and it's like this person's has weeks left, right, there's very little that can be done. And the same thing goes for relationships. And a lot of people are like, I can take care of it. I can fix it. It's going to be fine. Just to go a little Band-Aid here and a Band-Aid there. And next thing you know, the relationship is to pieces. And then before they get divorced, they're like, okay, fine, we'll go to counseling. Right. At this point, what could the doctor do when the relationship's already like stage 4 cancer, the relationship's almost dead? Right. So what do you want the doctor or the therapist to do? There's almost nothing that they can do. You're going to go once to a therapist. What's that going to do? You should have gone 20 years prior.
So this is a great way to end. This is a great way to end the webinar, because I was listening to a shiur on Elul. And he was talking about Elul, and the time that we have right now is all preparation for the year to come. And he says, he uses the context of a marriage, that this couple's getting married. The father of the chassan and the father of the kala, and they're both a little overweight, and they both need to lose weight, and they both want to look really, really good and healthy for the wedding, and they want to be able to dance and what have you. So it's 30 days before the wedding, and the wedding is set for 30 days. And the father of the chassan says, okay, here are the things I'm going to do, and here are the things I'm not going to do. I'm going to exercise. I'm going to eat vegetables. I'm going to eat fruit. I'm not going to eat treats, snack, not even treats. I don't even call them treats. I don't know how that came out of my mouth. I'm not going to eat junk food. I'm not going to eat sugar. I'm not going to eat, extra bread, And he does that, and it's 3 days before the wedding, 4 days before the wedding, and he looks amazing. He's already lost 10 pounds. He's buffed up. He's looking really, really good. The father of the kala doesn't do anything, doesn't do anything. 3 days before the wedding, he goes, oh my gosh, and he starves himself, and then he goes on a long run and he weighs himself the next day and he weighs the same, and he doesn't understand why, right? So it's, how do we want to show up in our marriages? How do we want to show up for our kids? How do we want to show up on Rosh Hashanah?
I was just going to say Rosh Hashanah.
the king of all kings, you know. The work of Rosh Hashanah is before Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, yeah.
Rosh Hashanah is crowning of the king. The shofar is like, you know, I always think, do, 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 you know, the king is being crowned.
Yeah.
That's what Rosh Hashanah is. It's a joyous, wonderful day if we've done the work before. So this is an opportunity, and maybe this webinar is giving us an opportunity as parents of, you know, kids who are in the world of Shidduchim right now, to really look at ourselves, to look at our motives, to look at our emunah, and really trusting Hashem. I have moments where I think, really, is this really going to happen? You know, and then I realize, wait a second. So just really looking at ourselves, and whether it's our marriages, whether it's
and doing what's best for our kids, not necessarily what's always best for what we want, but what's best for our kids.
What's best for our children. And that's what my tefillah stories are. And let's just end with that more than anything we can do is just daven that we are the vessel for, you know, bringing down the shefa, you know, that we can be grateful to Hashem for everything we have. We can be grateful for our children. We can be grateful for all the shidduchim that are made, and really have genuine joy when our best friend's daughter just got engaged, and the woman across the street's kid got engaged, and maybe your kid isn't, right? To really, really reach within yourself, to really be besimcha. And that should, if we can all be besimcha for each other and work on ourselves to just be the next best version for this coming year, Amir Hashem will see lots of really, really, really good shidduchim, lots of good marriages, lots of just, I can't even say it plurally because my Hebrew's not that good, but lots of beautiful homes. You say it, and may we really all celebrate this coming year in Yerushalayim with the coming of Mashiach.
Amen.
Right. Always a pleasure, Rachel.
So wonderful, always wonderful speaking to you, Chaya. Take care. Bye-bye.